we are starting. Okay, so, should I introduce what article we read? Okay, so we read What is Cultural Identity? And so my first question is just that, what is cultural identity? And how did you interpret that from the article?
For me, cultural identity is kind of you can't really use the words in the definition, but if I could, I would say it's what culture you identify with. But if I couldn't use the words, it'd be like what group you choose to be a part of. And it's kind of like, you can choose, it's like some of it, some of it is a choice, and some of it I think you're just a part of naturally through who you're around and who you're with. So I think it depends also on which culture you're like referencing.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that you don't necessarily always choose what culture that you're, maybe, especially initially, maybe as a young child, and as you grow into young adulthood, maybe that culture that you're born into, let's say, isn't necessarily who you ultimately end up identifying with. So I think it can evolve a little bit, but I think there is a certain amount of it is what you're born into, and a certain amount is what you choose to identify with.
I would agree. I would agree mostly.
What do you disagree about?
Yeah,
I was gonna say I agree. I was gonna just so like in the article it says like cultural heritage refers to what society as a whole possesses, and then cultural inheritance is what each individual possesses, and you can choose whether to kind of take in your cultural heritage, but you can also choose to take in something from a completely different culture. And I think the way that would happen is like again. Like in our last discussion, we talked about how the way you grow up and how your surroundings can have impact on you as an individual. So if you live in a place that has a lot of diversity and a lot of culture, or if you grow up traveling, then you have so much exposure to different ideas, and you have an ability to choose who you want to be and what ideals and values you're going to adopt as your own.
Well, I think it even says
multiple cultures.
Well, no, I even think in the article it says you can, within a culture, there's different little subcultures and different ways of looking at things.
Well,
so, yeah.
and I would say you don't need. I would say you don't
point.
even know necessarily. You can be part of a culture you don't even realize you're really part of.
Like a language is like, even in the article it talks about language cultures, and like just whatever language you speak connects you to a certain culture.
Yeah, that's true.
But not automatically to all the cultures that speak that language, because there's the subsets.
Yeah.
And I just want to add something about language. I think I'm just going to add something. So, do you know who Trevor Noah is? He's like the host of The Daily Show. Do you remember learning about that? He's a comedian, and he's comes from a background where he's a mixed white and black. He's mixed white and black, and he grew up speaking multiple different languages, and he uses that in his comedy. So that kind of brings people together. Also, like having that exposure to different languages, it brings people together. Yeah.
See.
Yeah.
See.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think cultures and what culture you identify can connect you to other cultures, and also connect you to just the world around you in general because of those qualities that you possess.
Okay.
Okay, and so I was going to say, what influences cultural identity?
I think we touched
Yeah,
on
we did kind of touch on that.
Excuse me.
Yeah. Is there anything you'd like to add to that question, though?
I think, we kind of touched on it a little bit, but like your influences from who you're with, what you like, what you don't like, what you choose to be a part of in general.
Media.
What you
value. Yeah, what you
Media, social media.
It's become a culture
TV.
unto itself.
Yeah.
That is true.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, I just said that. Okay, I'm just going to ask my next question. I think I worded it kind of badly, but how does diversity in culture now influence the dynamicity? I can't say this word. Dynamicity, so it's like how does it influence its rate of change? Because in the past, we were very segregated, and so people were more likely to fit into stereotypes. But now that everything's like kind of mixing
Blended.
together,
Yeah.
like how does that increase the change of culture?
Well, I can tell you, just in my lifetime, going from a society that, we had black and white TVs with no cable, basically, when I was, first born, to a society now where we've all got our own little computers in our hands and can communicate in many different ways and whatnot, and with many different people across the world, not just the country or the state or the city that you live in. It's got a profound effect on culture. And it's blending all these cultures together now, and the way you guys grow up, or the way you guys are growing up, compared to the way Mom and I grew up, is you're very much more open-minded than we were.
Well, you have more experience with different cultures purely because of social media, or because you didn't grow up on a black and white TV that told us this is the only culture that was the right culture. So now you've got shows and people from all over the world
Yeah, I mean, like
that are influencing your culture.
You were basically, for a minute there, I thought you were English. Because you used to watch a YouTube video or a YouTube show, a British YouTube show, and I'd be like,
and you'd pick up
really? Did you really use the word loo for the bathroom? But look how that influenced you right there.
Yeah, I think the key word is exposure. We're just full of more exposure to everything now because of all the connections.
And that includes the cultures.
And that includes cultures of other people.
Yeah, but it's very recent, because like again in history, like it was just completely like illegal. Like it's only been recently that we've been allowed to kind of share these experiences with different cultures. And yeah, I'm just gonna go into my next idea about so in the article it talks about how like because culture is changing, people are less likely to fit into groups. And how does that change your view on stereotypes? Like, do you think stereotypes, like they still exist, but do you think they're a lot more dominant than they used to be?
I think the kinds of stereotypes have changed a lot. I think we went into like very racial stereotypes and very like gender stereotypes, and now I think we think more personality type of stereotypes.
Yeah.
I think you can agree with that, especially being in school currently. You can see that.
Like, what type of group do you hang out in? Like,
It's not necessarily race-based or the cultures are more based on
like when you just like your interests, especially prior.
Or maybe like
not
smart
like
people, or people that like
people who
do
take
drugs
classes.
or certain like it's almost like The Breakfast Club. You know that movie? Like each person came in from a different group of people, and then they all kind of learned like, oh, I'm different for this reason, but I feel like I have to hang out with this person because they match.
because
my
that's my
personality.
cultural. Because that's my culture.
It's like your culture.
Or that's
Was she gonna add anything? Were you gonna add anything?
I agree with everything.
Yeah, I just think that's how stereotypes have changed. They're definitely still in place, but they're just different.
Well, I think it's
Everything
it's
evolves.
interesting that with the Me Too movement and just all that we're doing with minorities and the evolution that we're having there, that we've the pendulum has swung so far one way now that we almost can't say anything that's race related or gender related or anything like that, right? But my God, we can shake our booty on TikTok and that's fine. No, I'm dead serious. That's the culture. TikTok, you can get away with murder, but by God, you say anything that's has any racial undertones or any kind of gender undertones or weight undertones or anything like that, you're gonna get.
Well, I also think that like I think what platform you say things on and what platform you post things on or public anything on, it changes the effect of what you're doing. So like everything on TikTok or any other social media app is almost taken as a joke. But I think now that we don't talk as much face to face because of social media, that when you say stuff to face, it means what it means. Like it is very serious because don't do as much in person.
It's on record.
Oh, that's true.
And people.
It's
that-
on record when you do it on your. It's on record.
Yeah,
Whereas
but she's
before it
saying,
was
I think,
never on
I think
record.
she's saying culturally.
Well, no, I know she's
No,
saying.
but
it's
she's
kind of a joke.
saying it's not as taken as
Yeah.
seriously.
I think the
It's-
tone
it's-
that people take it with is different.
But when you're in
Because
real
people
life,
know
it's
what
different.
people know, go onto TikTok and know what to expect. They know what they're prepared for. But like with the people you talk to in real life, or like your friends or family, like you have a certain standard for them to uphold. So I think that's different.
And I think in any social media platform, if you say anything to anyone, like if you're just texting your friends and you say one thing, it can mean they can interpret it
Totally
completely differently.
Yeah.
Texting is
And
definitely
a lot
very much like that.
Cause
Like you can make a very serious statement and then add lol to the end of it, and like
And
the
it's
entire
just-
Yeah,
statement
the whole
changes.
thing.
like, but I feel like it's a lot easier to watch what you're saying when you're texting than in real life. Like in real life, if you say something that's even like the slightest bit racist, everyone's gonna go like, oh my god, I can't believe you
Yeah.
just said that.
Yeah.
But then like over text, you can
Say
write
what-
something
yes.
down, and then you're like, wait a second, this is completely wrong. I
Bada
can't believe
bing,
I just
my
said this.
point right there.
And then you can, yeah, exactly, you can delete it. And I think,
Or you can say JK. Just kidding. Like you know, you can like.
When
change
we
it
all
to
know
where-
that you're
You
probably
can-
not kidding,
Yeah.
but yeah.
You
But like
can,
yeah.
you can basically fix your mistakes in social medias, where in real life, when you say it to someone, it's permanent, like they've heard it, and it's
Yeah.
not. You can't say it was a joke or
Yeah.
didn't mean to send that or autocorrect.
Yeah.
okay, so I think we kind of, that was a good, I think we kind of got away from cultural identity part, but that was okay. Okay, so I was, so why does a person's cultural identity have such a great impact on their life? Like,
Mom, would you like to add anything to that?
Why does it have such an impact on our life?
yeah, like, that's kind of an obvious question. It's kind of an obvious answer, honestly.
I think it has an impact because it's our setting, it's our surrounding. It's like a lot of culture is what your day-to-day looks like. Like if I'm in a culture with like sports or something, it's like who I'm around, who I'm with, what changes my personality, what affects how I act and how I look. And so I mean it's kind of everything.
Yeah, I mean, so when we started this unit, I was like, oh, I'm white. I don't really have a culture. Like,
Yeah.
there's not really anything. And so when I kind of looked and reflected on my life, I realized, like again, I'm gonna go back to the Breakfast Club. Like, I feel like I'm part of so many different. I'm part of so many different cultures, and I've been influenced by so many different cultures. I feel like I can view the world in a completely different way than say like a person who is completely isolated in kind of one place. Like I would say like more in the South, like where there's a lot like less black people. Right?
There's
Oh, I
No,
mean
it's
yeah.
not
there's
that
more.
less.
Well,
They
there's
just
more.
don't
It's just
agree.
that they're
They're-
more used to segregation.
Mhm.
so a lot
Well,
more
for me,
racism.
when
That's good.
when I heard that we were starting the culture identity unit, I don't want to say that I rolled my eyes, but I didn't want to I was kind of like frustrated at the fact because I was like, oh, I'm white. I don't really have a culture. I don't really know what I can bring to this unit. I think this will just be me kind of like being sad that I'm not a part of a culture. But then as we started it, I realized more and more that like culture isn't what I thought it was, and it's not how I originally thought of it. And so it kind of shaped my
Culture's not
perspective.
race.
Well,
Culture's
Yeah,
not race.
see,
I
I
kind of
thought
had
it
the
was
two.
race.
I thought they had them equal. I thought they were the same thing.
Yeah, but
Well-
it's like everything. It's
Yeah.
it's personality. It's what your interests are. It's how
It can be
you-
influenced by your race, certainly.
Yeah,
But
Well,
but
even-
it's
It's
not
different
race.
things.
I mean, race isn't everything, and I think that's kind of what this article is saying. It's like your race isn't what defines you anymore. It's
Our attributes.
It's-
and
yeah, it's how you interact with society and your values and how kind of what you like, what you believe in. Yeah. Okay.
It even says in the article that, and I'd like to find it, but shoot, I was looking for the quote. But what was the? Go back to the question while I look for the quote here. What was the question again?
Why does a person's cultural identity? Wait, the one that I just asked.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't remember what it was.
Oh, we don't often recognize that we're a part of a culture, that we have a culture, because it's the norm.
Oh, I know what
they
part
wrote
you're
that
talking
in
about.
there.
It's right here. It's our own culture is often hidden from us, and we frequently describe it as the way things are.
So I
like,
think that's
so
kind
for
of-
you,
Yeah,
what you were saying was, I don't have a culture, this unit, because it's just the way things are, the way our household is, the way we operate. I mean, it just seems like normal to us. It's just the way it is. It's not a culture.
Yeah, because like before I thought of people's culture like what?
Because they're Jewish.
Because they're Jewish or because they're Hispanic, they do these
Or
sets.
Quinceañera,
Yeah.
you get a bat mitzvah, or you get
Yeah,
a quinceañera, or
I
you
don't-
get it, and you're like, I don't have anything.
Or what type of food they eat.
Yeah. I'm like, we eat whatever's at the grocery store. like,
Yeah.
Which is not true.
And
We
now,
eat
like,
American
I would
food.
like a person that like had a quinceañera, like they have that specific culture. But if they marry someone from a completely different culture, they can maybe combine those traditions, or they can choose how they
Their
want.
culture may
Yeah.
change.
Like they can choose if they want to keep a tradition or not, or they make like a blend of those traditions, or they do one thing or the other. And I think that's what it's saying by saying like culture is now dynamic and it's always changing. It's because we're now just, it's legal to marry people of different races, so you're just always blending, and you're just making you're just changing everything always. So everything like traditions and values is just changing. And also interpretation of different ideas can also be influenced by cultural identity in the way you see it.
I think culture is like a fine wine. It's not specific to, a good wine is not specific to one type of berry. It's a blend of multiple berries, and I think culture is a lot like that.
I like that.
Good culture is a nice blend.
Yeah.
You need to I like that.
All right, there you go. Is that? Oh, sorry.
No.
Oh, I have three.
Oh, you
more
have three
questions.
more
We still-
questions.
Yeah, I
We still
know.
like 4
Oh,
minutes.
Okay.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So mine.
I just thought that was a good thing.
No.
Oh, my
I'll
last
save
question is gonna be pretty good.
Oh, okay.
So my next one is: do you think people are more likely to see past stereotypes in places where there are diverse cultures?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I think so, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought I said no, and I was like, oh, you should elaborate on that. I was,
No.
Yes, I just think because the experience is different.
I think people get a lot more offended when like
Yeah.
something isn't they aren't as exposed to from when they're young. Like okay, I'm gonna bring up the phrase like okay boomer because people say that now to like identify to old people because or like people who are grown up in that generation, and I think they're just more offended in general, and I think that
As I said, we're not boomers.
Yes, but to them, we are.
No,
no.
we're Gen Xers, baby.
But anyways, I just think it's because that generation grew up with a very set standards, very set like things you were saying, and like now those have changed, and now whenever they see something that's out of that, I think they're more likely. What was the question? It was more likely to be
seen as like stereotype or like. Well, yeah, I feel I'm just gonna add on to this kind of stereotypes. They'll probably like. So, for example, like my grandma, she's very,
or like sometimes use the term very old fashioned.
Very old fashioned.
Yeah.
Like when she's talking about dating, she's like, you say we went. Hold on, let me start over. We used to go on dates. We went a couple of dates, and then if they were gonna say, "Oh, I'm gonna go steady with someone," you would give them their class ring, right? And if you, she gets so mad about this, but when she talks about dating, she's just like, you young people are just like so making quick decisions, and you're not even thinking, and it's just not right. Like you guys should be like getting to know each other instead of like having sex right away. Like, just well, yeah.
Do you feel like there's a stereotype though?
I mean,
I
no,
don't think
but
all,
I think
all young
I
people.
think older people are more like they look at young people and think like, well, they're just not doing it the
I think
right
old
the
people
right way.
stereotype people in a way that.
Yeah, I think I think it's also like stereotyping ages, like millennials.
There's reverse discrimination.
But it goes the same way because you're stereotyping all people from that generation that think that way, and I don't think they all think that way.
No.
I think they all have different backgrounds, and so there might be a majority of them that think that way. But there's plenty of them that were hippies and that you know, they have a whole different
Yeah.
idea of things. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, honestly,
I think it
stereotypes
goes
go
both
both
ways.
ways. I mean, so it's kind of.
Yeah. Okay. So, so I'm just gonna introduce this question. So, in the article, it kind of talks about how I need to find it. Okay. I know it kind of. It mentions how it's harder for people to get grouped into stereotypes, even though we just kind of talked about how it wasn't. But that's what the article is saying. Do you think eventually, like, with how much culture is changing, that we can eradicate stereotypes? Like, even that, if that is going to be the very far distant future, do you think it's going to be possible?
I think there'll always be
What do you think?
stereotypes. What do you think, Will?
I think there always will be stereotypes because, like, even like back in the day,
old days.
there were like racial stereotypes, but now they've evolved into like what you like stereotypes, like what's your interest and stuff. They'll probably evolve even more in the future,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
still be around.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's exactly kind of what I was gonna say. Is the stereotypes will always be here. The stereotypes may change,
Yeah.
and they may evolve, but I don't know that there'll ever be a time when there won't be any stereotypes.
Yeah.
I think humans
There's
are
only
too judgmental in general to
yeah,
not
there's always
put a
gonna be
stereotype on
a
something.
judgment on something.
Yeah. Okay, and then I'm just gonna ask my last question. How do you think your cultural identity impacts your own life?
Well,
Excuse me.
prior to this unit, I didn't think I had a cultural identity. But now that I can go back and kind of reflect upon it, I think it affects everything in my life because it determines, like I think I've said prior, how I act or who I choose to do certain things with, which affects my values, my religion, how my belief, my way of thought. You know, they're kind of all connected through cultural identity. Do you have anything to add to that?
I agree. No. So what was that last question?
How does, this is specific to you, like, how does your cultural identity impact your life?
Well, I know it sounded pretty bad. That sounded pretty bad. No, I could answer it honestly, or I could choose to move on to Jamie.
I don't know. I agree with Lorelai. I think our cultural. I mean, everything. I don't know. Everything we do is a product of our culture.
Yeah, it's like this choice leads to this choice leads to this choice. It's like it's and
Your way of life.
yeah, it's just like how I choose to be, and that's kind of all connected through it.
Mm-hmm.
But don't you ever feel like maybe that you're just like, man, I'm kind of stuck in this culture, so to speak, and I can't really, do a whole lot to necessarily break the mold or not be so basic or, whatever.
Yeah, so, like
with the
you go.
with the opinions on like when people call you Bisco or like your personality type.
Yeah,
Sometimes you don't want to be called that, and you feel stuck in that because of what you like or with race, what you look like.
Yeah, and personally, like, I have multiple different groups of friends because I like different things and I like exposure to like different people. But like kind of the main people I hang out with, especially at school, they're kind of known as like the high cappers. Like they're really smart. They're kind of stereotypical like nerds, and sometimes it's kind of hard being with them because I hang out with other people. They assume I'm someone I'm not. Like they assume like, oh my God, she does drugs. She's doing all this illegal stuff. Like I'm not.
Yeah.
I just hang out with people who do that
Yeah.
stuff. So it's not me personally, but they see that because I'm hanging out with them, they think that I'm like that. When
You're
I'm not.
stereotyped because of
Yeah.
the different cultures you are a part of.
Associated
yeah.
with, yeah.
You're associated with, yeah. And I think anybody who has multiple groups of friends has to deal with that.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Very
So
good.
questions or anything to add to the conversation?
Do we have any articles that are newer than, say, 1977?
This isn't 1970.
This one's 1973.
Oh,
They're quoting guys from.
I don't think so.
They're
It's
quoting
not.
people. They're quoting people from Gertz, 1973.
Okay, never
Can we
mind.
get any-
Garcia, 1994.
Okay,
Oh,
so
okay.
I would
That's
say
from
no
the
then.
90s.
So I would
no.
say-
I would say this
We don't
is
have any
current.
The
current.
springboard said no.
Yes, yeah, I don't think
Right
so.
here.
The scholars didn't write anything after
2018 College
1994.
Board. 2018 College Board.
Oh, okay. Well,
Welcome to the conversation.
would be nice
No,
if we
we're
get.
good. We
Be
don't
nice
have
if they
any
quoted
other
some
comments
people.
to add.
That was awesome.